and thank you for joining us for our first in a series of lives for new teachers. I'm Stacey Hortz, and I am the marketing manager at ClassTag. I'm joined by a couple of amazing educators that I'm going to let introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Melissa. I teach 7th grade English.
I'm Katie. For the past 5 years, I have been in middle school English, but I will currently be transitioning for the next school year into elementary special ed.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us and lending us your education expertise. So, tonight's topic, we are talking about ways to earn your students' respect from day one. And this is a huge subject. You hear a lot about building relationships. I mean, everywhere you look, every book you look at is talking about this. But I think a question that a lot of us have is, what does that actually mean?
I guess it depends. Being in a Title I school, respect looks different depending on the class period and which level of class you're teaching. But for the most part, it's really just having an understanding between the student and yourself, because some of my students, they understand that they're respectful to me, but I can be sarcastic and we can have fun. And some of them, straight out the gate, I have to be consistent, and I have to put on that mean teacher face of, nope, we're not doing this.
I completely agree. Some students you can always joke around with them and they get it, and some it's never going to happen. So you just have to know your kids and know what that relationship looks like with each of them.
I think you've hit a really good subject there of you have to know your kids. So that brings up the question, how do you do that? How do you get to know those students starting off a year? Because you start with a whole new batch of kids every year. What are your suggestions or your tips and tricks? How do you get to know those kids?
For me, if it's kids that have been at the school before, because I'm a middle school teacher, I go back to their previous teachers and I ask, hey, what are some things that worked? And I keep in mind that, hey, the kid may have changed over the summer. They may not like the same things. And then if you look, there's subtle ways you can ask them straight out, hey, first day of school, first week of school, get to know your kids. And just remember that the kids change just as much as anybody else.
So I had a really unique situation where I actually had the same kids like over and over and over. I actually had several kids that I had from 6th to 8th grade. So I obviously built a pretty good relationship with them. But even the ones that I just had for 1 year, I always had like a survey, like what's your favorite color, your favorite movie, just stuff like that. Just ask them, questions that you would just ask regular people, because the kids are people too,
Mm-hmm.
even though they are students, they're just people too, just like us. So, asking questions, asking their parents. I mean, I started something last year that I really enjoyed, just asking their parents to write like an introduction letter of their child, because their parents know them better, than their teachers do sometimes. So, asking questions, ask them what they like, ask their parents, ask their friends, whatever.
And I think when you start reaching out to parents and asking them about their children, it's a great way to build that bridge with the parent. Show them that you're interested, you're invested, and you want to get to know their child. And I think that's a good point for parents to be like, okay, so here's the thing about my child.
Mm-hmm.
And then they tell you the things that actually help you a lot. Now, it may not be the most positive things, but those are the things you really need to know to help that child. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I ask for my parents' input at the beginning of the year. I send home a letter that the kids have to bring back saying that these are the expectations of the class. And then at the very bottom, it's the parents. I've rarely gotten one back that a parent doesn't tell me something about their kid. Of, hey, my kid's really shy. They're not going to participate in class. And that helps me to build that relationship with the kid without having to force it. Because the parent is going to know that kid way better than you are. In a normal setting, and you just have to take that with a grain of salt.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's an important thing to note is that, you know, the parent starts reaching out to you. And you made a good point about a kid, that's really shy and maybe they're hard to, get to know. Knowing that helps you know how to reach them and not be that over assertive person or that bubbly person that you always are. Like sometimes you have to take a different approach with those kids. Would you agree?
Yeah, and it even helps with those kids, especially if they're really shy. Having been a teacher for a little while now, some of those kids won't ever even ask for help because they're so shy. So that also helps me to open a line of communication that they can, for instance, send me a message on a virtual line of communication to where they don't have to know that they're getting help. I'm there, but their classmates don't have to know, or they can participate without having to talk in front of everybody. Hey, I know what the answer is. Oh, okay. And we'll go from there.
Yes, I absolutely agree. So we have another educator joining us. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Jen, and I teach kindergarten. I've taught kindergarten for 16 years, so I may be able to help with that question we got just now, too, on the chat. So our question we just got now is about pre-K. For the little kids, we like to do some community building right at the beginning of the year with read alouds. We also do like a bracelet or some kind of thing that connects everybody right at the beginning of the year. A poem, a story, something they take home. Our orientation's usually before school starts, so we like to have something they take home and they can do the night before that we can talk about on the first day, and then kind of let them know a few things about you ahead of time, like a little postcard or a letter. We did a virtual postcard one year, so it had like pictures and a little short video, and then the kids could come in and say like, oh, hey, I like to go to Target too, or I like that food too. So it gives them something to connect to you about, or, maybe they don't like your favorite food, which is fine too, because it's still something to talk about. So letting them know that you're like a real person too, it helps them feel more comfortable coming in.
Yeah, I agree. I think you almost get better conversations when they don't like the thing that you like, because then they start talking about the things that they do like, and it becomes like this whole classroom conversation. So it's almost better when they don't like the thing that you do. At least that's my experience. But I taught middle school kids.
They're very passionate about telling you why they don't like that thing.
Yes, you're wrong because, and I'm going to tell you why. But hey,
well,
they could
you have to, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to say I'm wrong, you're going to have to explain it, because that's fair.
Give me evidence, support it. That's exactly it. So we've talked about, the building of the relationship. How do you keep that relationship going? Because the school year is a long year. And some years it seems longer than most. So how do you keep that relationship going from day one until May?
That one's really hard. For the most part, it's literally just taking their little quirks that you see every day. If they shared something with you, you integrate that, and let them know that you're listening and they're important. And let them know that you're always there. I mean, that's one of the biggest things that I've seen anyways, being a teacher, is that some kids, they have trust issues. So building that relationship and keeping them and letting them know that, hey, I'm pushing you because I know you can do better, or I'm going to back off because you're giving me signs. You just need to pay attention to them just like any other adult. You can tell physically, verbally, anything, that they're where they are. So the baseline for the day. And sometimes you do have to take it day by day.
I think for the littles, it's important to tell the parents too, like, hey, if you had a rough morning, send me a message. And I use ClassTag for that all the time. Drop me a message and just say we had a rough morning. I had a parent last year that would say, I had a really tough night last night. And I would say, you know what? We're all humans. It's okay to have a tough night. And I appreciate them letting me know that, because then I can give the kid a little bit of extra time, patience, know that they need that. And something that I say to my kids all the time is, if I thought this was your best, I would let it go. But I expect more because I know that you can do more than what you're doing right now. And we're here to learn and grow. And I need you to work a little harder because I know you can do it.
I like how you worded that. You know, if I thought this was your best, I would be okay with that. And I think that's a great way to do it is, you know, you can do better. That was one of the things I used to tell my students is you can do better. I know you can. I've seen you do better. So how can we fix that? You know, make it about you're better than this. And I think that's a lot of building a relationship and keeping it is how you approach that child. And again, I taught middle schoolers, so it's a little different. You know, I could have those conversations with them of, all right, what are you doing? Why are we doing this? And usually that's all it took is a conversation about, you know, you're better. I know you are. Show me.
5-year-olds get that too, though. I sometimes they're just smaller sometimes.
Yeah. And I think it's good to have those conversations and actually make them see what they're doing. Because if they can see it, then they'll recognize it next time.
And I think it's also important to let them know that, hey, everybody has bad days. Like I have no problem telling my kids, hey, guys, I had a bad last period, or I had, you know, I'm not having a good morning. I'm sorry if I'm a little grouchy. And they kind of ebb and flow with me. And that's that whole thing of you have the choice to be like that, but understand there's a consequence for it. So, you know, they have to understand that, you know, you can have an off day. I'm still going to push you a little bit, but I'm going to be respectful of those boundaries. And that I expect that back. And I don't know about littles, but with middle schoolers, that tends to be a little easier to kind of stay at.
Well, you're being real with them. And, you know, with a lot of kids, if you're real and you show them, hey, I'm a person too. I make mistakes too. Sometimes I have my cranky day. And I would tell my students, I'm really cranky right now. Be nice to me. And they would. Usually they would be like, okay, we got you. But I gave them that same courtesy. Like if they came in and were like, Miss, I'm having a bad day. Okay, go sit over there now. We'll leave you alone in your space. You know, I think making that environment where you can be honest with me. If you didn't sleep last night, if you're tired, if you don't feel good, tell me. And then I can help you. But I can't help you if you don't tell me.
Yeah, sometimes they need a day, you know, to kind of just like chill. Maybe they had a bad night, something happened. They just need a day to kind of chill, you know, just like we do. So it's the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So now let's talk about icebreakers. We do these. I've tried a ton of these. What are your favorite icebreakers?
For me, anyways, being an English teacher, my favorite is this or that. It's one where my kids are up and moving, and there are some little things where we'll be like, oh, you know, do you like cake or pie? And they'll have to go to one side of the room, and then I'll just randomly pick a kid and be like, why did you pick that? And sometimes it gets some heated discussions going, and which is great because later on we have our argumentative unit, which my kids excel at most of the time. But this and that I think is my favorite because we put some serious topics in there and we put some real goofy ones, and I think they really enjoy it.
I think it's a little. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
The littles play that too. Now with the pandemic, they made it really virtual and simple for them to see pictures and understand. And a lot of times they make them exercises now. So it'll be like run in place if you like pie, or jump up and down if you like cake. So, and then while they're doing it, they're like trying to scan the room to see like who matches them. So it's not just for us, but it's for them to make friends too. But it doesn't sound like it would be great for little kids, but they've made it really easy to do, and lots of topics. Sorry, Katie.
No, you're fine. Also on that same note, it's really fun to do like things where they have to walk around the room and ask questions. So like scavenger hunts to talk to people, because, you know, you get middle schoolers who've been with the same people and they get new kids and they don't want to talk to the new kids, or the new kids don't want to talk to them. So if you make them an assignment or whatever where they have to, and then you start building that community in that classroom together, then that helps you start out on the right foot there.
That's a great suggestion. You know, there are a lot of teachers, and I want to address this with new teachers, that'll do icebreakers that involve food. This one is terrifying to me because I have to eat on a gluten-free diet. That's not a choice for me. It's an autoimmune disorder and it's required. But it opens me up to kids have food allergies. You know, I had a kid with peanut allergies this year. And so if you're going to do food, don't do it on day one. Don't do it. Talk to kids, talk to parents, find out what those food allergies are before you even go near food, because it's yes, it's fun, but it can be very dangerous to children. Have you had experiences with food allergies or things like that steer you away from the food things?
It did at first. My first year teaching, I had a whole gamut of food allergies. Like I had kids who were allergic to nuts, like not just peanuts, but tree nuts and strawberries. And I even had a kid who was allergic to chocolate. And I was like, oh God, what am I going to do? So, but now having taught for several years now, I literally keep a little bit of everything on purpose because a lot of my students are very food driven. I'm a food driven person. I love food. But I also give them options. So I also keep things that are non-food, like I'll have little gift cards, or I'll tell them, hey, I'll buy you lunch one of these days. Just tell me what you want. And even as something as simple as, here, have a free, homework pass. Not that we do homework a whole lot, but I'll give you a free 100. And they're completely fine with that. Come with a million different ideas. Food is great, but sometimes you're right, Stacey, it can be a little dodgy.
We're not allowed to have food at our school. And this is a personal topic for me. I have children and they both carry EpiPens because they have severe food allergies. So, and every year there's kids in our school that have severe allergies. And so any food that's at our school has to be ordered through our cafeteria. And the head of our cafeteria that is at our high school checks through a lengthy list of allergies in the class and makes sure that they're allowed to have certain snacks that our cafeteria purchases for them to have for birthdays. And then we are allowed to have 2 parties, and they're allowed to bring food in, but everything has to be sealed, package checked, sent home, stapled shut. But that's another community building opportunity. We have friends in our class that can get really sick, and we have to do our part to take care of them. They're part of our community. If you teach it to them when they're young to take care of their peers, then as they get older, it's just part of being in a community where we help take care of each other. And it works out fine. You can bring in, toys and other little things. For us, we do desk pets for rewards in kindergarten, where you have a tiny little animal eraser that you get, and everybody gets one in my class. And then throughout the year, you can earn rewards for them. Or if someone in the hallway says, oh my gosh, your class is so quiet, then everybody gets a reward. Or if we go to an assembly or something like that and everyone's well behaved, then everyone will get one. Or at the end of the year, they all helped clean everything and put things away. Everybody got something for that. So, and they get food for their pet then, and they don't eat it, but obviously It's the same concept, but you just kind of find things that are motivating for your particular group too.
Yeah. Homework passes, like I said, but a lot of the people on our live, they're sitting there saying, well, we can't have food either. So the homework pass, the extra 5 points on your lowest assignment, or an earbud day. My kids love an earbud day. You have to have one out so you can hear me, but as long as you have that earbud pass, I will not tell you can't listen to music.
Yes, I totally agree with earbuds. Another one that I would do for my students was games. If you finish your assignments, on Friday, I'll give them a pass for 10 minutes of online games. Those kids will play Cool Math for hours if you let them. Now, obviously, they can't play Fortnite in my class, which we're going to get to Fortnite in a minute, and how that impacts relationships, because there is a way. But I don't mind them playing school-appropriate games, as a reward, because you know what? It motivates them. It really does. So, okay, on the subject of Fortnite, since I'm already here, one of the things that I found with my kids was the day that the new Fortnite release came out, we were learning nothing in class, because what were they doing? They were talking about Fortnite. So I built relationships with my students by incorporating that into my class. One of the assignments we did was Google Slides. And I was like, all right, tell me about the Fortnite update. Go. Every student in that class turned their assignment in on time.
Mhm.
It was done. It had pictures. It was pretty. Why? Because I made it interesting. I made it something they wanted to talk about. And that was huge. So how do you incorporate those things that they're interested in into your content?
Okay. So I did a thing. I've tried it a few times. I did it religiously this year. From the time we came back from Christmas break until spring break, so January to April, we did every Friday. I gave them, so I had the same class for basically 2 hours. Each class, we did Genius Hour. So they had like 2 hours to work on whatever they wanted, whatever topic they wanted. They could research hairstylists. They could research dogs. I had two eighth graders build a semi out of cardboard. Like whatever you want to do, you can work on it. And they worked with people like that they had never even talked to all year. They came up with like these really cool ideas. I had some that 3D printed things. I didn't even know they could 3D print stuff. Like I didn't even know they knew how to work Tinkercad. And they're like pulling up all these prints of stuff. They had a great time. And then they were showing everybody all their cool ideas. It was like the best project that I could have done, because not only did it like help them learn about something they wanted to know, but they were also building their relationships with each other and with me.
I love that. And I'm really loving this conversation with that. Go ahead, Melissa.
No, it's fine.
Okay.
With my kids, let's be real honest. A lot of my kids don't like to read. And so they come to my class and they're like, I don't want to read. Well, you're in English class. I'm sorry. And I do a survey and I'm like, what are some things that interest you? And I do it as warm-ups or exit tickets. And I'm like, you have 2 minutes. Tell me 4 things that interest you. And I will use those in our upcoming units. I do have a limit on what I do. Like if 1 million of them tell me video games, I only pick 2 things. And I'm like, all right, we're going to pick the 2 most popular video games. I use my teenage son. What are the 2 most popular video games right now? And we use those, and those are really what we use. But the fun thing is that sometimes they find out they like things during the process that they didn't realize they liked that you can use for next year.
I think that's amazing. So the chat over here has got me so interested because I'm loving these little erasers, and someone lets them earn a house and pets and food. Okay, I love this. It makes me wish I had taught that age. That would have, you know what, middle schoolers would have loved that too. Who am I kidding?
They would have.
They would have. They would have been all over that.
Yeah.
I want little erasers on my desk. Like, I love this idea. It makes me so
My
happy.
boss has one that she has on her desk.
I would so be that. I would be that person. But you know what? I have things on my desk too. So that is reaching out to me. Okay, so I think, we've talked about some things. Does anybody use a question of the day with your kids just to get them talking, get them communicating? Have you used a question of the day in your class?
I've done that before. Go ahead. Sorry.
It's okay. I haven't yet. I use word of the day, and some of my kids do come up and go, how do you say that? But that's about as far as we've gotten. No question of the day yet.
I've done like a writing prompt of the day, just like a short kind of creative writing thing that they would respond on Padlet, and then they would have to respond to like kind of like discussion boards. They would have to respond to one other classmate, except I would pull it up on the board, and they would really like seeing all of their stuff on the board. Like, oh my gosh, there's mine, and look at this one. And so that really worked, but that was also incorporating the technology too, of course. So.
I love that. And it also brings up something else that someone had put in the chat a little bit ago, which was when you're teaching things, you have to model it for them, show them what it looks like. And on the flip side of that, show them what it doesn't look like. This is one that I learned with my students this year. Was we were talking about, they were talking about disrespect, and they could tell me what disrespect was. But when I asked them, well, what does respect look like? Not one person in that room could tell me, because they've never angled it that way. So we had to go through, okay, here's what disrespect is. So now what's the opposite of that? For them to work through what it meant. So I think when you're teaching things or you're, going over expectations or explaining, even for like an icebreaker, you're explaining how it works. You got to show them how it doesn't work so they can really process what it is. How do you do that when you're explaining something new, you're teaching a new routine or something? What's your process to show them what that is?
Well, I call it my weird little quirk. So I'm pretty sure a lot of you know that middle schoolers, some of their favorite words are "shut up." That's swearing in my classroom. We don't say that, and so every year I have to go through when I'm modeling my expectations, and of course we have to have a long discussion when we get to "you can't say shut up." And well, miss, why can't we say it? It's not a big deal. Well, that's disrespectful. Why is it disrespectful? Okay. So I will sit there and model it for them. Listen, if I look at you and you tell me something and I immediately tell you, shut up, what are you going to do? Well, I'm going to get angry and we're going to argue. That's disrespect then. So if I say, hey, can you please be quiet? They were like, oh, well, I won't get angry. I'll ask you why. Well, you have every right to ask me why. But I have to model it. And every year I have to be like, okay, we're going to have this discussion again.
I think part of that is the pandemic too, though. A lot of kids we're used to being home, and we see that at the lower level a lot more than we used to too. They just aren't used to waiting or having to be one of many because they were home with their families and they were just one of, they're one of two, one of three, one of four, one of a handful, and they're just not used to waiting their turn or having independent skills. And that's been a real challenge for us, even those of us that have been in it for a long time.
Yes, I agree with that.
That's especially dependent on like what your population is, because, in a Title I area, what they hear at home, I mean, there's no telling what they hear. So they're going to bring that to school and do the same thing that they hear at home. So we have to try and model that and try and help show them what you should be doing.
I 100% agree with that. And they some of the students that I had, they said those curse words at home. They said a lot of things at home that they should not say in a classroom. And we had to have those conversations of, okay, there's a time and a place for that. It's not here. Because
especially with like the middle school, like the 8th graders who are at the end of the year, they're ready to be big bad high schoolers. They think they're untouchable. Yeah,
they do. And I taught college and career prep, so I could also have that conversation from a place of, okay, that's all great, but when you go into a job, you start cussing at a customer, you're probably gonna get fired. Like, you can't just because you're growing up doesn't mean you can do everything you want to do. Adults still have rules. I'm so sorry to break this to you. And I mean, that's how I approach that conversation with them is this is what the real world's going to look like. And you need to understand that now, because I think, with my students, I treated them just like, like adults. I didn't talk to them like they were kids. I treated them like people, because I've always been that person. I don't like being talked down to, so I won't do it to anybody else. And so I had that relationship where I could be like, okay, that's not going to work. Like, no, you can't do that in the real world. This is what's going to happen to you. If you go and tell, your boss this, they're going to fire you. I'm sorry.
We call them adult words in my class. You're not an adult, and we're not using that word. And I'm an adult, and I'm not using that word either. So it's not appropriate.
There you go.
Well, no, go ahead, Stacey.
Just teaching them time and place. Like, there are places you don't say those words.
Well, and sometimes they may not even get it with that discussion, which is why you have to flip it on them. Well, if I were to say that, how would you respond? And sometimes my kids, that light bulb will go off and they're like, oh, well, I feel this way if you say that. That's why we don't do that. Like, it's so normal for them that sometimes their thinking is blocked and they're like, well, we do that all the time at home. What's the big deal?
Yes.
Well, let me explain to you why, using you as my explanation.
that's a great way to do it. Like make them actually process, okay, how do you feel if I say this to you? Putting it that way to them makes it make sense for them and makes them see, how they would feel in that position. And I think that really does work with those older kids.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else you would like to add about building relationships or ways to get your students respect and keep it?
Just make sure that you remember, as a first year teacher, I remember that I went in expecting my kids to be at one end or the other of the spectrum. Like there wasn't going to be no in between, but there are those in between days. There are the days that you have to adjust on the fly, and remember that it's completely okay. As long as you stick to your expectations that you set in the first place, you're really going to do just fine.
And I think one thing I would add is, there are those kids that when a teacher, that had them last year is like, oh, that kid, don't take another teacher's word on a child. Make your own opinion. Get to know that child, because in my experience, the majority of those kids that I got were fine with me because I treated them different. So where any other teacher might have had an issue with that child, most of the time I didn't. And if I had let that teacher's opinion influence how I treated that child, it's not fair to them. And it's also not fair to me because it's creating a situation for both me and that child that we don't deserve to be in. So, you might take under advisement what they have to say, but make your own opinion based on that child because you're a different teacher. And from one year to the next, they might be a different student.
Or even period to period, you kind of you have to give them a fresh start, just new day is a new day.
Agreed.
Because I had some teachers, they would be like, oh, that kid. And we would share the same kid. And I'm like, I never have a problem with that kid. What are you talking about? Like, that kid is so sweet and respectful.
Yeah. And I think that is a time to have a conversation with that teacher. Like, what's going on? How is that happening? And maybe you can help them because maybe they're doing something that just sets that kid off. But you know the kid well enough that you know what it is. And that's a time to have that conversation with that teacher and maybe help the child and them, right? So we've had a great conversation, some great ideas, and we're going to do a live session every week at the same time over different subjects to help our new teachers and maybe even teachers that have been teaching for a while and looking for some new tips on things you can do to build relationships, keep them. We're going to talk about where to find resources. So after this session is done, I'm going to post on our social channels a link that has a list of things to help you. We've got resources, we've got some book suggestions, a ton of resources coming for you. So if you have questions, put them in the chat. Even if we don't answer them here, we will answer them later on, I promise. And I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. I think we had some great things going on, some great things in the chat. And just thank you all for showing up and participating. So have a wonderful night and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.